My personal view is that we need far more insight and not more metrics, and ultimately, probably less surveys and more action on the back of customer insight. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because actually, um, I don't think I can give you an example of something that has changed my assumptions about what makes a great customer experience, because essentially, great customer experience, I think, is an age-old concept. And it's something that local businesses that truly know their customers have known how to do well for decades, and long before the advent of, all the sort of fancy terminology, if you like, that goes with customer experience today. And I think what we do have now is a lot of big global brands who, in essence, are trying to recreate all of those aspects of great customer experience, but on a massive scale. And at its essence, a great customer experience for me is about something that is personalized, so really recognizes you as an individual customer. An experience where the organization or the brand that you're interacting with is really proactive. So, when they think ahead about what your needs might be, they're preempting to a certain extent what might be best for you as the next step in the relationship. And in particular, if something goes wrong, they're very proactive about putting it right. And the third aspect for me is about being productive. So an experience that saves you time and effort, that removes those pointless little moments of friction that are sort of getting in the way of you achieving what it is you want to do. So, I think those aspects of customer experience are sort of age old, and they endure. I think the real challenge is, well, how do you deliver that when you've got organizations that are interacting across so many different channels with so many different customers? And in terms of an aha moment, probably what does stand out for me is just how important that proactive piece is. And I think back to some research that we did when I was at British Airways, which looked at the impact of great service recovery on the overall customer satisfaction scores. And the research looked at the satisfaction ratings that were given by customers whose experience had gone absolutely seamlessly, compared to those where something had gone wrong, but it had been recovered really well. And interestingly, actually, the satisfaction scores were higher for those customers who had had something go wrong in the experience, but where it had been put right in a timely and really proactive way. And that's not to say that then obviously organizations should be planning to fail and then make themselves a hero. But it was really interesting to see actually how big an impact on the customer emotions and how they felt about the brand, just by the fact that the organization had shown them that they really cared and wanted to make it better for them. So I would say that was an aha moment. That was something we weren't expecting to see in the data. That's a really great question. And very often I do see that drive for short-term results in organizations can lead to decision making, which often is destroying customer loyalty in the longer term. And I do realize that organizations are under pressure to, deliver the business results. So I think for customer experience teams and leaders who are working in that kind of environment, The really important thing is to try and find a sweet spot where, by removing points of friction in the customer journey, they effectively are also removing points of friction for the business and for their employees, their customer service employees. And very often, in fact, it is, where you're forcing customers to jump through hoops and creating friction in the experience. It actually is costing the business because it's an inefficient process. Very often, it's creating additional inbound calls into the call center, for instance, because the customer isn't getting the solution that they're looking for. So I think it's important for customer experience teams to be looking for instance, those instances where customer issues are not getting resolved at the first point of contact, and to try and understand then what additional workload is that creating for the organization overall. Repeat inbound calls, additional complaint handling, you name it, So I think there are things that customer experience leaders can do to try and find that sweet spot that does result in short-term business benefit at the same time that it has a great outcome for the customers as well. But clearly, I mean, your question was about the need to build towards that longer term loyalty as well. And I think the key to unlocking that is being crystal clear on your customer experience principles and how those support ultimately the brand vision and purpose. And I think where teams are clear internally with the organization about the correlation between those things and can test everything that they're putting into the market, every proposition that they're developing is tested against those principles, and you can see how it ladders up to supporting the brand vision, then I think you've got a chance of building towards that longer term goal of creating customer loyalty and brand loyalty. But you need to be absolutely crystal clear on that framework. So trust and loyalty are engendered when you're able to build an emotional connection with your customers. And it's interesting because I think with the advent of increasingly AI-driven solutions being deployed in the customer experience, there is a real risk that brands start to dehumanize the overall customer experience. And I think that will have a negative impact inevitably on customer engagement and loyalty. So I think, one lesson really is to be really careful about how AI is deployed to ensure that it doesn't become a replacement, in essence, for that human to human interaction. The second aspect for me is about transparency and openness, which I think are also key in building trust. So you need to do what you say you will do when you say you will do it. It's really quite simple. And it's also about demonstrating a genuine care for the customer. So does the organization have genuine empathy? And by empathy, I mean, it isn't just about understanding the customer's current situation. You need to be able to understand it, but be sufficiently empowered and equipped to do something about it. So, it's back to that point that I made earlier, which is be proactive. So understanding that is the customer's current context, am I able to respond appropriately? So I think AI can how are the insights that help an organization understand what it's doing that is being successful in building that trust and engagement. But equally, it needs to help organizations understand what it's doing that's actually destroying that emotional connection. And I think the advantage of AI is that it can help organizations make sense of large volumes of unstructured data in order to be able to do that. But equally, it's important to remember that whatever solutions the organization is putting in place, it is responsible for that end-to-end experience, right? So just as I'll give an example, when a retailer that you are purchasing from employs a courier to deliver your parcel that isn't very good, that's the retailer's responsibility. If that part of the experience goes wrong, that is the retailer's responsibility. And likewise, if you are deploying AI in the end-to-end service experience process, you are responsible as an organization for the outcome. And I'm reminded of a legal case actually that was brought last year against Air Canada, where they had deployed a chatbot to answer queries and presumably drive down costs in terms of getting answers to customers quicker without actually having a human customer service agent involved. But this chatbot made a decision about a customer refund and gave out some advice to a customer who then acted on that. And Air Canada didn't want to honour the decision that the chatbot had made. So, ultimately, you've got to be, as a brand, you've got to say, you've got to say what you're going to do, and then you have to do it. And if you've deployed AI in the end-to-end process and that makes a different decision, you have to accept responsibility for that and make it better. Frankly, for me personally, the number of transactional surveys that we as customers receive now is overwhelming. And I am really somewhat skeptical about whether it's delivering meaningful insight for organizations. So my personal view is that we need far more insight and not more metrics, and ultimately probably less surveys and more action on the back of customer insight. So I think that actually AI has the power here to help drive out those kinds of insights for organizations. And businesses really need to be adapting to think about how they can bring in large volumes of unstructured data rather than forcing the customer through the hoops of a transactional survey that actually may not be asking the one thing that is really relevant for that customer. I think about, I shop in a local supermarket that is a very well-known brand here. And every so often they will send me a survey that asks me, did I visit this part of the store or that part of the store, and which services did I use in there, and whether I use the self-service checkout. The one thing they're missing in all of that is the fact that my scan and shop app does not work. And I'm really frustrated with that retailer, but that's not the question they ask me. So I'll never get to understand why actually I'm not shopping in there as frequently as I could be. So I think with generative AI, there is the possibility of really getting to work on those customer insights and thinking about what are the right questions to ask the right customers so that you can start to get to the nub of what's really driving, what do they really think about the organization, and getting more meaningful insights than I think are being drawn today from, the plethora of transactional surveys that we all receive after the smallest little interaction with a brand. I think another area that really benefits, that would benefit from a deeper investigation is the linkages as well between customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and productivity. So for me, that isn't about starting to develop, yet more metrics, but it's about using existing information and existing data and triangulating it in a different way. And I think there will be huge benefits for organizations that can truly get to grips with those linkages. And it's back to that point we were talking about earlier on, about needing to see results, so when you really understand the linkages between customer health and the need to spend loads of the health of the customer base, and the need to spend lots of money on marketing, or customer satisfaction and employee productivity. I think that's, we find those sweet spots in the intersection between great business results and good outcomes for customers. So I think all feedback is an opportunity for brands to learn. And even if that learning is about, actually, this type of customer is not right for this product or service, that is important learning. So I would never say, ignore feedback from certain types of customer. I think everything needs to go into that feedback loop, to review, what is it that we could be doing better. Clearly, when you ask customers what they want, and they're going to describe something that's an absolute nirvana for them, and brands can't necessarily deliver that in a cost-effective way. So it's not to say that by listening to and understanding those views that they necessarily are going to have to act on them. But if we come back to those principles of the customer experience that build towards the brand vision and purpose, then, and testing everything that they do against that, then what they really need to be understanding from the customer feedback is, when have they actually failed to live up to those expectations that they have set out and that they're aiming to deliver to customers. So everything is an opportunity to learn. It's just it might depend actually what that lesson learnt might be. I think first thing I would say is customers are currently uncertain about whether AI and technology have genuinely improved the customer experience. And from my own perspective, I know that it has been very frustrating when I find technology that has been deployed as a replacement for service in a customer service channel. And more often than not, it's a hindrance rather than a help, because usually by the time I've turned to that channel, actually, I don't have a simple question. I have a more complex question. And but being made to go through the sort of chatbot gatekeeper hoop that isn't able to actually answer my query is just frustrating, and it's a waste of time. And and then I still have to go further in order to get the genuine assistance that I need. So I think brands have to have a really clear focus on the customer journey and how AI enhancements can help to guide the customer in that journey and help to remove those points of friction and actually deliver more relevant and personalized experiences that are really responding to the customer's current circumstances and to their current context. And I do think that AI has the power to engineer that in a way that can be really powerful, but very often I'm seeing it deployed in a way that is just seeking to remove cost from the process without that genuine focus on the customer need. I do think there's a possibility that those baseline interactions that don't need to be that sophisticated can be powered in quite a meaningful way by AI, and particularly as the technology develops. But I think it's more about thinking about how it can guide that customer process rather than become a replacement for a more human interaction. So I see it much more as an enabler, really, and something that can help to power a more empathetic and contextualized experience that feels more personalized and relevant to the customer. But it's not a replacement for real humans delivering real human empathy when that is required.